AITA for refusing to let my parents move into my house after they sold theirs without telling me. I, 33F, have always had a complicated relationship with my parents. They're not bad people, but they've always been impulsive, dramatic, and have a habit of assuming I'll clean up their messes. Growing up, I was the responsible one. When my dad lost his job, I got a part-time job at 16 to help pay for groceries. When my mom decided to start a boutique candle business that never made a single sale, I helped her set up her online store and quietly paid the electricity bill when she forgot. After college, I worked hard, saved aggressively, and bought a small 3-bedroom house with my husband, Alex, 35M. We don't have kids yet, but we plan to. My parents were always a little jealous. They've never owned a house. They rented and moved constantly because they couldn't manage money. Every time we invited them over, they'd make little comments like, "Wow, must be nice not worrying about rent," or "Guess it helps when your parents raised you right." Ironic, considering they didn't. 2 months ago, my mom called me sounding panicked. She said their landlord was selling the property they'd been renting and they had to move out within 60 days. I felt bad for them, so I told her I'd help them look for a new place. I spent hours researching rentals in their area, even offering to co-sign if needed. She said she'd think about it. Fast forward 3 weeks later. I got another call, but this time my dad was the one talking. He sounded oddly cheerful and said, "Good news. We sold the house, and we're ready to move in." I was confused. I asked what he meant by sold the house. He laughed and said, "Our stuff, our furniture, the lease, everything. We're free and ready to move in with you guys for a while until we find our forever home." I was stunned. I told him that wasn't what I'd offered. I'd said I'd help them find their own place, not that they could move in with us. My dad got quiet for a second, then said, "Well, we already told everyone we were moving in with you. Your mother even told her church group that her daughter was finally taking them in." When Alex came home, I told him everything. He was furious. We both work full-time and enjoy our space. We use one of the extra bedrooms as a home office and the other as a guest room. We simply don't have the room, or the mental bandwidth, to take in 2 chaotic people who can't manage their lives. The next day, my parents showed up at our door with a U-Haul. I thought it was a joke. They were standing on the porch, surrounded by boxes and old furniture. My mom said cheerfully, "We figured we'd just unload into the garage first." I told them to stop right there and that they couldn't move in. My dad's smile disappeared instantly. My mom started crying, asking, "Where are we supposed to go?" I told them I'd help them find a short-term rental or even pay for a motel for a couple of weeks, but they could not live with us. My dad got angry and accused me of abandoning my family. He said, "We sacrificed everything for you growing up, and this is how you repay us?" That line hit me hard because, frankly, it wasn't true. They'd never sacrificed much for me. I'd sacrificed for them. But still, guilt crept in. My mom sat on the porch crying, saying she'd always known I'd forget where I came from once I got married. Alex eventually told them they had to leave our property, and my dad called him an ungrateful son-in-law. It got ugly. They finally left, but my phone exploded with calls from extended family. My aunt texted saying she couldn't believe I'd kicked my parents out like dogs. My cousin posted a vague Facebook status about kids these days having no respect for their parents. It got around fast. A week later, my parents called again, calmer this time. They said they were staying with friends temporarily, but my mom asked if we could at least let them store some of their furniture in our garage, since it's just sitting empty. I said no. I know how they operate. They'd start with a few boxes, then a couch, and before I knew it, they'd be sleeping on air mattresses in there just for a few nights. Now, apparently, they're telling everyone I chose my husband over my family. My dad even called my boss's office. I work at a family-run local firm where gossip spreads fast, and told one of the receptionists that I was having a breakdown because of domestic issues. It was humiliating. Alex says I need to cut them off entirely, but I can't quite bring myself to do that. Despite everything, they're still my parents. But the more I think about it, the more I realize they didn't just assume. They planned this. They sold or gave away everything, quit their jobs, and publicly announced they were moving in with us before even asking. It feels manipulative. Last weekend, my aunt called again, trying to mediate. She said I should just let them stay for a few months until they get back on their feet. When I asked if she could host them, she said her house was too small and her husband needs peace and quiet. I said, so does mine. She hung up. Since then, my parents have been sending guilt-ridden messages. Old baby photos, reminders of birthdays, emotional stories about how hard their life has been. It's a lot. My mom even sent a long voice message crying and saying she wakes up every morning wondering where she went wrong raising such a cold daughter. I've been trying to stand firm, but part of me still feels like a monster. Alex says they're adults and made their choices. He reminded me that if we let them move in once, we'd never get them out. He's right, but that doesn't make it easier. The house feels tense lately. Every time the phone rings, I freeze. My parents have always been messy, but this feels like a whole new level. My friends are split. Half say I'm right to protect my space. The other half say family is family, and I should just bite the bullet. The thing that keeps running through my head is this. If I let them move in, I know exactly how it would go. They'd criticize everything we do, take over the living room, leave dishes everywhere, fight loudly, and never save money to move out. I become their parent again. But if I don't, I'll be the villain in their story forever. The ungrateful daughter who turned her back. So here I am, weeks later, with family members still cold toward me, my parents couch surfing, and my phone full of unread messages. I keep wondering, am I the asshole for refusing to let my own parents move in after they sold everything expecting I'd say yes? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée wear my late mother's wedding dress even though my dad offered it to her. So this whole thing has turned into a huge family fight, and I honestly don't know if I'm being overly sentimental or just standing up for what's right. My 28F, Mom passed away 4 years ago after a long illness. She and my dad were married for over 30 years, and their relationship was basically the gold standard in my mind. Mom was a sentimental person who saved everything, but her wedding dress was the crown jewel. She kept it perfectly preserved in a cedar chest in her closet, wrapped in tissue paper. When she got sick, she told me that one day, if I ever got married, she wanted me to wear her dress. I was her only daughter, and she was big on continuing the legacy. I remember crying with her as she said it because I wasn't even dating anyone seriously at the time, but it was one of those conversations that felt sacred. When she passed, I inherited the dress, and I've kept it safe in my apartment ever since. My brother, Ryan, 31M, got engaged last year to his fiancée, Jenna, 27F. I've always liked Jenna. She's bubbly, kind, and has a good sense of humor. We got along really well at first, but things got weird a few months ago when wedding planning started. Apparently, Jenna saw an old photo of my mom in her wedding dress and became obsessed. She told my dad how beautiful it was and asked if she could borrow it for her wedding. According to my dad, she said it would be a beautiful way to honor my mom and keep her spirit at the wedding. My dad, being the peacemaker he always is, thought it was a lovely idea. Without asking me, he told Jenna that Mom would have love for her to wear it and that he'd make sure I brought it over so she could try it on. When Dad told me about this, I was stunned. I said absolutely not. That dress is mine now, and it was specifically meant for me, not anyone else. I explained that it's not just a dress, it's a personal connection to Mom, and I wasn't comfortable loaning it out. I said I didn't want anything to happen to it, and frankly, it just felt wrong. Dad said I was overreacting and that Mom would have wanted Jenna to feel welcome, like part of the family. He said I should think about how much it would mean to Ryan, and that refusing was selfish and unnecessarily territorial. When I told Ryan and Jenna directly, things exploded. Jenna cried and said she didn't mean to overstep, but that she felt like it was a family heirloom, and not just mine. She said she'd take the utmost care with it, even pay to have it professionally cleaned and restored afterward. Ryan told me that I was being dramatic and that it's just a dress. But it's not just a dress to me. It's the last tangible memory I have of Mom that's purely mine. I even told them that if they wanted to honor her, I'd be happy to lend Mom's pearl earrings or her lace handkerchief instead. Something small and less personal. Jenna refused, saying those items don't have the same visual impact. Dad eventually got involved again, saying I should reconsider because the dress would bring everyone together and that I was making this harder than it needed to be. That honestly broke me. My dad is one of the kindest people I know, but he's been acting like my boundaries are just some emotional phase. Things hit a boiling point last weekend at a family dinner. Ryan made a joke that Mom's probably rolling in her grave, seeing her dress locked in a closet instead of walking down the aisle again. I snapped. I told him he was disrespectful and that he had no right to use her memory to guilt-trip me. I said the dress is mine. End of discussion. Jenna started crying again. Ryan called me heartless, and my dad said I needed to apologize for ruining dinner. Now everyone in my family is taking sides. My aunt, Mom's sister, texted me saying she understands how I feel and that my mom definitely would have wanted me to have the final say. But my dad and brother keep calling me cold and possessive, saying Mom loved Jenna and would have been honored for her to wear it. I feel like I'm being cast as this bitter, jealous sister who can't stand her brother's fiancé. But that's not it at all. I like Jenna. I just think this crosses a line. I told my dad that I don't want anyone else wearing the dress. Not now, not ever. If I get married, I want to wear it. If I don't, I'll still keep it as a memory of Mom. It's not meant to be a community costume. Jenna hasn't spoken to me since that dinner. Ryan sent me a text a few days ago saying that if I really loved Mom, I'd want her memories shared, not hoarded. That one hurt. I tried explaining again that this isn't about jealousy or being possessive. It's about respecting something deeply personal. But I think he's convinced himself I'm just trying to punish them. My dad keeps asking me to sleep on it and reconsider, saying it's not too late to make things right. He even offered to get the dress professionally altered so it could be returned in perfect condition. But I don't care about the condition. It's the principle. Once someone else wears it, it won't feel like mine anymore. To make things even messier, Jenna's mother called me yesterday. She said she knows this whole thing is sensitive, but that Jenna is devastated and feels rejected by the family. She asked me to be the bigger person and let love win. I was polite, but I told her no and hung up. Now I'm getting guilt-tripped from every direction. My dad's disappointed, Ryan's furious, and Jenna's heartbroken. My aunt and a few cousins think I'm right, but they're staying out of it. I feel like I'm protecting Mom's memory, but everyone else thinks I'm being controlling and selfish. I keep second-guessing myself, because part of me wonders if I'm letting grief cloud my judgment. Maybe I'm holding on to this dress like a lifeline because it's one of the few things of Mom's that still feels alive. But another part of me feels like if I give in, I'd be betraying her trust. It's gotten so bad that I told my dad if he pressures me again, I'll move the dress to a safe deposit box. He looked genuinely hurt and said he couldn't believe I'd go that far against family. So now I'm sitting here wondering if I really am being unreasonable. Am I selfish for refusing to let my brother's fiancé wear my late mother's wedding dress, even though my dad gave his blessing? Or am I just setting boundaries no one else wants to respect? AITA for refusing to let my husband's daughter move in with us, even though she has nowhere else to go. So, for background, I, 38F, have been married to my husband, Ryan, 45M, for 6 years. We've been together for 9. He has a daughter, Emily, 19F, from a previous relationship. I don't have any biological children, but I have a son, 10M, Jacob, from a relationship before Ryan and I met. When Ryan and I first got together, Emily was about 10. She lived primarily with her mom, but she would come to our house every other weekend and for a few weeks during the summer. I always tried to be kind to her and make her feel welcome, but she was difficult. I know kids can be moody, but Emily went out of her way to make it clear that she didn't like me. She would make comments about me, trying to replace her mom, roll her eyes whenever I spoke, and sometimes refuse to eat the food I cooked because it wasn't like Mom's. I told myself it was just normal kid stuff and that she'd grow out of it. But she didn't. When she became a teenager, things got worse. She started being openly rude, calling me names under her breath, and even told my son once that his real dad didn't want him. I drew a line and told Ryan that she wasn't welcome in our house if she couldn't be respectful. He backed me up in theory, but in practice he never really enforced it. He would make excuses, she's going through a lot, or her mom's been talking bad about us again. I tried to let it go because I didn't want to be the evil stepmom cliché. When Emily turned 17, she stopped visiting entirely. She said she didn't want to come over anymore and Ryan didn't push her. He'd call or text her, but she rarely responded. They had a strained relationship, and he was always sad about it, but he also never really took responsibility for setting boundaries or addressing the tension between us. Now fast forward to last month. Emily just turned 19, and apparently she had a massive falling out with her mom. For what I gathered, it was about Emily dropping out of college and not getting a job. Her mom told her she needed to start contributing financially or move out. Emily refused, so her mom kicked her out. Ryan got a tearful call from Emily, saying she had nowhere to go and asked if she could stay with us for a while. What he told me, I froze. On one hand, I get it. She's his daughter. On the other hand, I have a 10-year-old who remembers how awful she was to him, and I still have scars from years of being treated like garbage in my own home. I told Ryan that I didn't think it was a good idea. I said Emily and I had never resolved anything, that she'd never apologized, and that I wasn't willing to have someone under my roof who treated me that way again. Ryan said I was being unfair, that she was just a kid back then, and that she needed help. I told him I sympathized, but Emily is legally an adult. She could get a job or stay with friends or relatives. He argued that she's still his responsibility. I told him he can help her financially if he wants, but I don't want her living with us. That turned into a huge fight. He accused me of being cold and heartless, saying that if it were Jacob in that situation, I'd expect him to take him in without question. I said that was different. Jacob hasn't spent years disrespecting him or our marriage. 2 days later, I came home from work to find Emily sitting on our couch with her suitcase. Ryan said he couldn't let his daughter sleep in her car. I felt blindsided and furious. I went to our room, shut the door, and didn't speak to either of them that night. The next day, I told Ryan point blank that I couldn't live like this. He said Emily would only stay a couple of weeks until she figured things out. That was 3 weeks ago. Since she's been here, Emily barely acknowledges me. She's polite to Jacob, but distant. She doesn't do chores, doesn't pay rent, and mostly stays in her room. Ryan keeps saying she's adjusting. I've overheard her talking on the phone to friends, saying she's crashing at her dad's for a bit because his wife's being weird. I'm trying not to explode, but every day it's harder. Last weekend, I told Ryan that enough was enough. Emily's an adult. She's been here almost a month, and she hasn't made any effort to find a job or another place. He said I was making him choose between his daughter and me. I said no, I was asking him to choose between enabling her and setting boundaries. He called me cruel. So I did something drastic. I told Emily myself that she needed to move out within a week. I said I understood she was in a tough spot, but that I didn't agree to her living here indefinitely, and I needed peace in my home. She said, "You're seriously kicking me out again? You've always hated me." I said I didn't hate her, but I wasn't her mom, and it's not my job to house her when she refuses to take responsibility. She started crying and locked herself in the guest room. Ryan came home, found out what happened, and went ballistic. He said I had no right to talk to her that way or set deadlines without consulting him. I told him he broke my trust when he let her move in behind my back. Now he's barely speaking to me, and Jacob keeps asking if we're going to get divorced. I feel awful about that, but I also feel like I'm being manipulated. Everyone in Ryan's family is texting me saying I'm heartless and that family helps family. My own mom thinks I'm right, but she also said, "You knew what you were marrying into." Last night, Emily packed a bag and left without saying where she was going. Ryan blames me, saying she's probably sleeping in her car and that if something happens to her, it'll be on me. I've barely slept since. Part of me feels like maybe I should have just tolerated her until she got on her feet. Another part of me feels like this never would have been an issue if Ryan had enforced boundaries years ago. So, Reddit-style judgment time. AITA for refusing to let my husband's daughter live with us and eventually telling her to leave? AITA for refusing to give up my late husband's house to my stepson, even though my daughter lives with me rent-free. I, 52F, have been a widow for about 6 years. My late husband, Mark, passed away unexpectedly after a heart attack at 49. We had been married for 15 years. When we got married, he already had a son, Ryan, now 28M, from his previous marriage. I had a daughter, Lily, 25F, from a previous relationship. We never had children together, but we raised our kids under the same roof from the time they were 10 and 13. Mark and I bought our family home together after we married. Both of our names were on the mortgage, and we each contributed about equally toward the down payment. The house was paid off just a year before Mark passed. In his will, he left everything to me. He said he trusted me to do right by both kids, which I always took seriously. At the time, Ryan was already living on his own and engaged to his now wife, Jenna, 29F. Lily was still in college and living with us. After Mark died, Lily moved back home to help me manage things emotionally and practically. She's been here ever since. She works full-time now, pays for groceries occasionally, and helps around the house, but I don't charge her rent. Fast forward to last year. Ryan and Jenna had a baby. They've been renting a small apartment, but recently started looking for a house. Housing prices in our area have exploded, and they asked if I would consider letting them take over my home since, according to Ryan, Dad would have wanted me to have it one day. He said I could move into a smaller condo, or maybe live with Lily. He framed it as a family handover, not an eviction, but I was floored. This house is my home. It's where I live with my husband, where I've made memories, where I still feel closest to him. I told him that I had no plans to sell or move anytime soon. That's when things started getting tense. Ryan accused me of favoring Lily and said I was holding on to his dad's legacy out of selfishness. He claimed that because I let Lily live here rent-free, I was already choosing sides. I explained that Lily and I support each other. She helps care for the house and keeps me company. It's not like she's freeloading while I sit on piles of money. Ryan then brought up something that stung. Years ago, when Mark was alive, he once mentioned that someday Ryan would probably inherit the house. But that was before the will was finalized and before we fully paid it off. Legally, it's mine. Emotionally, though, Ryan clings to that memory as if it were a promise I broke. A few weeks ago, Ryan invited me to dinner. I thought it was to reconnect, but it turned into another attempt to convince me. He and Jenna presented me with a proposal. They'd take over the property, pay the taxes, and let me visit anytime. They even had rough calculations printed out showing how much they'd save if I agreed. When I said no again, Jenna sighed and said, "You don't need such a big house at your age. We could make it a family home again." I told them the conversation was over. That night, Ryan sent me a long text accusing me of betraying his father's memory and hoarding wealth that wasn't entirely mine. He said I was setting Lily up for life, while he got nothing but memories. Since then, he's barely spoken to me. His wife blocked me on social media. My daughter is furious at him. She thinks he's being manipulative and entitled. But some of my friends say they understand his perspective. They think it's kind of unfair that Lily benefits so much while Ryan, who is also Mark's child, gets nothing tangible from his father's estate. The thing is, Mark didn't leave Ryan nothing. He set up a modest trust fund when Ryan was 18 to help with college and life expenses. Ryan used it for his wedding and part of his house savings. But because I inherited the rest of the estate, technically, the house and investments were left to me. I've tried to compromise. I told Ryan that one day, when I pass, the house will go to both Lily and him equally. I even consulted a lawyer to make sure that's written into my will. But he said that's too late. He needs help now, while his family is growing. He called me cold for caring more about a building than my own grandson's future. To complicate things more, my late husband's sister, Ryan's aunt, recently called to say that Ryan came to her crying, saying I kicked him out of his childhood home. She told me I should let the young family have their turn and downsize like normal widows do. That comment infuriated me. I don't feel old or ready to give up my home, and I certainly don't appreciate being guilt-tripped. Now family gatherings are unbearably tense. Ryan avoids me entirely. Jenna gives me short, polite responses and won't bring their baby over anymore. Meanwhile, Lily has been telling me she feels guilty living here now because she thinks she's the reason everyone's angry. I told her she's not, but I can tell she's considering moving out just to ease the tension. Sometimes I do wonder if I'm being too stubborn. The house is big, and I could live comfortably in something smaller. But part of me feels that giving it up now would feel like losing Mark all over again. I've worked hard to maintain it, paid taxes, repairs, everything on my own. And if I sell or gift it now, it would change my entire retirement plan. But I also can't ignore that Ryan is Mark's son. Maybe it is unfair that Lily effectively benefits from the home now, while Ryan has to struggle in this market. Maybe I'm unintentionally repeating patterns from their childhood. Mark and I always joked that Lily and I were a team, and Ryan was closer to his dad. Maybe I'm reinforcing that divide without realizing it. Still, I don't think it's right for him to expect me to uproot my life just so he can have cheaper housing. I feel like there's a difference between inheritance and entitlement. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give up my late husband's house to my stepson, even though my daughter lives here rent-free. AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay in my house after what she said about my daughter. I, 34F, live with my husband, 35M, and our daughter Lily, 8. My brother Jason, 30M, started dating this woman named Brooke, 29F, about 8 months ago. They got serious really quickly. Brooke moved in with him after just 3 months, and ever since then, she's been inserting herself into our family gatherings like she's been part of the family forever. At first, I didn't mind. She seemed enthusiastic, and Jason seemed happy, which is rare for him because he's always been kind of loner. But Brooke has this habit of saying jokes that aren't really jokes. She's one of those people who will make cutting comments about someone and then say, "Relax, I was only kidding," if you call her out. It's exhausting. For example, when my mom had us all over for dinner, Brooke commented that my husband and I must not be doing too well financially because we drive an older car and don't take many vacations. Then she laughed and said, "Oh, come on. You know I'm just teasing." Another time, she made fun of my sister for still being single at 28. It's always like that. Little digs disguised as humor. I usually ignore her because I don't like drama, but what happened last weekend crossed a line. We were hosting my parents, Jason, and Brooke for dinner at our house. Everything was going fine until after dessert, when Lily came downstairs wearing this fairy costume she made for a school Halloween project. It had glitter wings, a wand she decorated, and a big smile plastered on her face because she was proud of it. Everyone told her she looked adorable, except Brooke. Brooke laughed and said, "Oh wow, that's a lot of pink. Do you let her dress like that in public?" You might want to teach her about what boys actually like before she turns into one of those girls who still thinks she's a princess at 16. Lily looked confused and a little hurt. My husband immediately told Lily to go show Grandma her costume in the living room while he and I exchanged looks. Jason chuckled awkwardly and said, "Brooke, that's not cool." But she shrugged and said, "What? I'm just saying it's good to teach girls to be realistic. There's nothing wrong with that." I told her that what she said was inappropriate and unkind. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're too sensitive. The world isn't going to baby her." That's when I lost my patience. I told her that in my house, no one talks to or about my daughter that way. Brooke huffed and muttered, "You can't even take a joke." I told her if that's what she calls a joke, then she's not welcome in my home. Jason tried to smooth things over, saying she didn't mean it that way, but I stood firm and said I didn't want her around Lily until she could respect boundaries. The evening ended awkwardly. Jason and Brooke left early. I felt bad that the night went south, but I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for my kid. The next day, Jason called me and asked if Brooke could stay at her house for a few days next month because their apartment was getting fumigated. I said absolutely not. He got annoyed and said I was overreacting. He told me Brooke had apologized in her own way and that it was unfair to hold a grudge over a harmless comment. I told him it wasn't harmless. She embarrassed an 8-year-old in her own home and didn't even really apologize. I reminded him that I had said she wasn't welcome until she could respect boundaries. Jason said I was punishing him for his girlfriend's personality and that I was acting snobby. My parents have been trying to stay neutral, but my mom did say she thought Brooke was a little tactless. My dad, on the other hand, thinks I should have just brushed it off and let Brooke stay for Jason's sake. He said, "You're not going to teach her anything by being petty. Let her stay and just keep her away from Lily if it bothers you that much." But that feels wrong to me. My home is supposed to be a safe space for my kid. I don't want her feeling anxious about whether someone's going to insult her again. I admit, part of me wonders if I could have handled it better. Maybe I should have pulled Brooke aside instead of calling her out in front of everyone. Maybe banning her from my house altogether was harsh. But I can't get the look on Lily's face out of my head when Brooke said that. She's been quieter lately, and when I asked if she was okay, she said, "I thought my costume was pretty, but maybe I looked silly." That broke my heart. Now, Jason hasn't really spoken to me in a week. He texted once saying, "I hope you realize you're pushing family away over something dumb." My husband supports me completely, but said I should prepare for this to cause a long-term rift. He thinks Brooke is manipulative and that Jason is too blinded by infatuation to see it. I don't want to lose my brother over this. I love him, but I'm not going to let anyone, even someone he loves, make my daughter feel small. Still, I keep wondering if I've drawn the line too hard. I know Jason is under pressure because he can't afford to stay in a hotel during the fumigation, and I could technically offer him the guest room and tell him Brooke has to find somewhere else. But that would probably just make things worse. A few of my friends said they would have kicked her out on the spot, and that I was actually restrained. Others said I should have been the bigger person for the sake of keeping peace in the family. So now I'm sitting here second-guessing myself. Was it really worth all this tension? Did I go too far in protecting my daughter? Or is this one of those times where holding a boundary is the right thing, even if it makes everyone uncomfortable? AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend stay at my house after what she said about my daughter. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after finding out I was only invited to fill space. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older brother, Jake, 31M. Growing up, he was the golden child. Straight A's, football captain, charming personality, the kind of person adults adored. I was the quiet one, artsy, introverted, and admittedly a little awkward. Our parents never treated me badly, but they definitely had higher expectations for Jake. After high school, Jake went to a prestigious university on a scholarship. I went to a smaller local college for fine arts, which my parents subtly looked down on. Jake got engaged last year to Claire, 29F, who I actually liked at first. She's bubbly, polished, and from a well-off family. The kind of person who looks like she was born ready for a wedding Pinterest board. When they got engaged, I congratulated them, and Jake said I'd of course be part of the big day. I assumed that meant I'd at least be a bridesmaid or involved somehow, but months went by and I heard nothing. When I finally asked Claire if she needed help with decorations or art stuff, she said, "Oh, that's sweet, but we already have professionals for everything." I shrugged it off. I'm not the type to demand attention. Then invitations went out, and mine didn't come. I thought maybe it got lost, so I texted Jake. He didn't reply for 2 days, and then finally said, "Don't worry, yours is coming." 2 weeks later, I still hadn't received anything. That's when my mom called, casually mentioning she was booking her hotel for the wedding weekend. I told her I hadn't gotten an invite, and she sounded awkward. She said, "Oh, I'm sure it's just a mix-up, honey." Something felt off, so I reached out to one of Jake's college friends, Max, who I'm still in touch with. Max hesitated, but eventually told me that Jake and Claire had originally decided on a small wedding and hadn't planned to invite me because we're not that close and she wouldn't know what to do with you there. Apparently, Claire thought my vibe, her word, didn't fit the aesthetic she wanted for her big day. Jake supposedly agreed, saying I'd probably hide in a corner sketching or something, and it might make guests uncomfortable. I was humiliated. I didn't even know what to say. About a week later, I finally got an invitation, but it was sent via text from Claire's assistant. Not even from Jake or Claire themselves. The text literally said, "Hi, we've had a few guest list changes and wanted to extend an invitation to you for Jake and Claire's wedding. RSVP link below. Guest list changes," meaning someone probably dropped out. I didn't respond right away. The next day, my mom called again, saying she'd heard I'd gotten my invite and was relieved. I asked her if she knew they hadn't originally planned to invite me. She got quiet and then admitted that, yes, she knew, but didn't want to get involved. She said Jake and Claire just had to make tough decisions about space and budget. For context, Claire's family is loaded. The wedding is at a vineyard with over 150 guests. Space was clearly not the issue. I decided not to go. I texted Jake and told him that I knew the truth, that I'd only been invited last minute to fill a spot, and that I didn't appreciate being treated like an afterthought. I said I hoped the wedding was everything they wanted, but I wouldn't be attending. He didn't reply for 2 days. Then I got a furious call from my mom saying Jake was devastated and that I was being immature for making it about myself. She said it would look bad if his own sister didn't show up. Later that night, Jake finally called. He said, "You're really not coming?" Over some stupid misunderstanding. I told him it wasn't a misunderstanding. I knew what he and Claire had said. He got defensive and said, "That was before." Claire changed her mind because she realized she wanted the whole family there. I asked him point blank if I was only invited after someone else declined. He didn't answer right away, then said, "Does it really matter? You're invited now." That was enough for me. I told him it didn't matter because it showed how little he actually valued me. He said I was being dramatic, that I always play the victim, and hung up on me. The wedding was last weekend. My parents went, of course. I stayed home and spent the day hiking with a couple of friends. Apparently, at the reception, my absence came up. My mom said people were asking where I was, and Jake told them I was too busy to come. A few relatives who heard the real story have been messaging me, saying they understand why I didn't go, but others think I overreacted and should have just gone for the sake of family peace. Now, my mom isn't speaking to me. She says I embarrassed Jake on the biggest day of his life. I keep wondering if I made it a bigger deal than it needed to be, but I also feel like I have every right not to attend an event where I was clearly unwanted until it became convenient. Some friends think I should have gone just to keep the peace and show I'm the bigger person, but others say I had every right to draw a boundary. The thing that keeps replaying in my mind is Jake saying, "Does it really matter?" Because yes, it matters to me. It's not about the wedding. It's about how little they cared about whether I was there at all. Now there's this huge tension in my family, and I feel like the bad guy for protecting my own feelings. So, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after finding out I was only invited to fill space. AITA for refusing to let my husband's parents move in with us after they accidentally sold their house, even though it means splitting up my family. So I, 34F, have been married to my husband, 36M, for 7 years. We have 2 kids, ages 5 and 8. My husband is a great dad and generally a good partner, but when it comes to his parents, he turns into someone I don't recognize, like a teenager desperate to impress them. His parents are the sort of people who think they're old school, but in reality, they're just entitled and manipulative. Everything has to go their way, and if it doesn't, they guilt trip or cry about family loyalty. For context, my in-laws have always had money problems, not because they didn't earn enough, but because they have zero self-control. They retired early, sold their business, and decided to live their best lives. They bought a fancy camper, remodeled their kitchen twice, and went on multiple cruises. Every time they made an impulsive decision, they'd call us afterward to brag about it. Then about a year ago, they told us they were thinking of downsizing. We both thought it made sense. They were in their 60s and their house was too big. But what they actually did was sell their house for cash to a friend of a friend who flipped houses without having another home lined up. They figured they'd find something small later, but prices in our area skyrocketed, and now they claim they can't afford anything. A few months ago, they told us they were staying in an extended stay motel temporarily. I felt bad, but I also thought it was their choice. Then one evening, they came over for dinner and announced, like it was already decided, that they'd be moving in with us until they get back on their feet. I froze. I looked at my husband, expecting him to say something reasonable, but he just smiled awkwardly and said, yeah, we'll make it work." I was furious. We live in a 3-bedroom house. 1 room is ours, 1 for the kids, and 1 small office where I work remotely. There isn't any space for 2 more adults unless we put them on the couch or move the kids together and convert their room. And that's without mentioning the fact that my in-laws are absolute nightmares as house guests. When they visit, they criticize everything, from how I load the dishwasher to what I feed the kids. Last time, my MIL threw out all my spices because she claimed herbs go bad after a week. FIL once told my son that real men don't cry when he got upset about losing a game. I can tolerate them for a dinner, maybe a weekend, but living with them? Absolutely not. After dinner, when they left, I told my husband flat out that they could not move in. He got defensive immediately. "They're my parents," he said. "They don't have anywhere else to go. What do you expect me to do? Let them be homeless?" I said, "No, but I expect you to hold them accountable for their own choices." They sold their house on a whim and now want us to fix it. We argued for days. He tried guilt-tripping me, saying that if my parents were in trouble, he'd help them. But my parents actually save money and make responsible decisions. His parents treat financial chaos like a lifestyle. Eventually, I agreed to a compromise. They could stay for a week or two, but that's it. We cleaned out part of the garage so they could store some of their boxes and set up a futon in the office. They moved in, and within 2 days, it was a disaster. My MIL started reorganizing my kitchen. My FIL smoked on the porch, even though we have a strict no smoking rule. And both of them complained constantly about the noise from the kids. My MIL even told me that since I only work from home, I could help her run errands during the day. The final straw was when I overheard her telling my daughter that mommy's rules don't count if grandma says otherwise. I confronted her, and she said I was overreacting and that a real family shares everything. That night, I told my husband they had to leave by the weekend. He said he'd talk to them. He didn't. Instead, he told them they could stay as long as they needed. I lost it. We had one of the biggest fights of our marriage. I told him that if he couldn't respect my boundaries in my own home, I'd take the kids and go stay with my sister until he figured out what he wanted. He accused me of tearing the family apart and said I was choosing pride over compassion. So I did it. I packed up the kids and went to my sister's. That was 3 weeks ago. My husband calls every day, asking when we're coming back. He keeps saying his parents are looking at options but need more time. I told him we're not coming back until they're gone. He said I'm being cruel and teaching our kids to abandon family when things get tough. My MIL even texted me saying she never thought I'd be so heartless. Meanwhile, my husband is now miserable because apparently living with them full-time is a nightmare. He admitted they're driving him insane, constantly criticizing, rearranging things, and bickering with each other. But he still insists he can't kick them out. I told him it's either them or me and the kids. He said I was forcing him to choose, and I said, "No, I'm asking you to enforce boundaries." My sister thinks I did the right thing. My parents agree too. But some of my friends think I went nuclear too fast and that I should have tried harder to make it work for the sake of peace. Now my husband says he's considering renting them a small apartment nearby, but he's resentful that I won't compromise. He told me last night that he's scared our marriage won't recover because I made him pick sides. I feel torn. I love my husband, but I can't live in a house where I'm constantly disrespected. I know his parents are technically in a bad spot, but it's a mess they created. Part of me feels like I should have tried harder to support him, but another part of me knows I did what I had to do to protect my sanity and my kids' environment. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my in-laws move in and essentially splitting my family apart over it? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's recommitment wedding because she's marrying my ex-husband again and expects me to be her maid of honor? This whole thing feels like something out of a bad reality show, but here we are. I, 37F, was married to my ex-husband, Jason, 39M, for almost 9 years. We met in college, got married in our late 20s, and divorced 3 years ago. The divorce wasn't explosive, but it was devastating for me. Jason told me he had fallen out of love and wanted to find himself. I didn't fight him much because by the time he said that, he was already halfway out emotionally. We didn't have kids, but we shared a house, mutual friends, and most painfully, family ties because my younger sister, Carly, 34F, was very close to both of us. She was my maid of honor at our wedding and would often hang out with Jason and me. At the time, I thought it was sweet that she and my husband got along. Fast forward about a year after our divorce. Carly calls me, voice shaking, saying she has something difficult to tell me. I brace myself, thinking maybe she's moving across the country or has some health scare. Nope. She says she's been seeing Jason for a few months and that they've fallen in love. I wish I could say I handled it with grace, but I didn't. I screamed, cried, hung up, and blocked them both. My mom called me a few hours later, saying Carly was so sorry, but that love happens in unexpected ways, and that I should try to be happy for them. My dad, who has always been more reserved, called it messy but not evil, and said I should move on. It felt like a betrayal that I couldn't even articulate. It wasn't just that Jason was my ex. It was that my sister, who held my hand through that divorce, who heard every ugly detail of how that marriage fell apart, somehow decided to start something with him. I cut contact with both for almost a year. Eventually, I started therapy, rebuilt my life, and met someone new, Eli, 36M, who is genuinely kind, stable, and emotionally mature. I'm in a good place now. I even began to reconnect slowly with Carly over the last year at our parents' urging. I wasn't enthusiastic, but I was tired of the tension at family gatherings. Carly would tear up sometimes, saying she hated how things happened, but that she and Jason didn't plan it. I stayed civil but distant. Now comes the real problem. Last month, Carly and Jason announced that they're getting married next spring. Not just any wedding. They're calling it a recommitment ceremony. They say it's symbolic because their love began in the ashes of something that ended, and they want to rewrite the narrative. My parents are helping them pay for it and are acting like it's some fairy tale romance. I thought that was gross enough, but then Carly called me privately and said she had a special request. She wanted me to be her maid of honor. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She said, "You're my sister. You were there for me through everything, and I want to show that we're past the pain." She said it would mean closure for all of us. I told her absolutely not. I said the fact that she's marrying my ex-husband is already disturbing enough, but asking me to stand beside her while she does it is insane. She started crying, saying she thought I'd forgiven her and that I was still bitter. I told her forgiveness doesn't mean participation. Now my family is split. My mom says it's a beautiful gesture and that refusing is holding on to the past. My dad says he understands why I don't want to, but he also thinks it's a chance to heal. Jason, of all people, emailed me, which I didn't answer, to say he hopes I can find peace and attend as a show of support. Eli says I'm completely right to refuse and that attending that wedding at all would be an act of self-betrayal. He's offered to skip any family gatherings involving them, too, which I appreciate. But now my parents are telling me that if I don't attend, it will ruin the family dynamic forever. To make it worse, Carly has been posting these long social media captions about the resilience of love and turning heartbreak into harmony. Everyone in our extended family is commenting about how inspirational they are. I feel like I'm living in some weird parallel universe where I'm the only one who sees how inappropriate this all is. A week ago, my mom organized a family dinner that I didn't know was basically an intervention. When I got there, it was Carly, Jason, my parents, and me. They tried to convince me that this wedding is an opportunity for everyone to move forward. Carly even said she'd picked out a soft lavender dress for me because it symbolizes forgiveness. I lost it. I told her she could wear lavender to her own wedding if she wanted, but I wouldn't be part of it. I said the fact that she's framing this whole circus as healing is just a way to make herself feel less guilty. Jason had the nerve to say, "You're clearly not over it." And I told him, "You're right. I'll never be over how you both decided my pain was just collateral damage for your happy ending." Then I walked out. Since then, my mom has barely spoken to me. She texted that I'm punishing Carly for falling in love. Carly sent me another message saying she understands my feelings but hopes I'll change my heart before the big day. My therapist says it's valid to hold boundaries when people cross lines that deep, but even some of my friends think I should just go to keep the peace. One of my coworkers who heard the story said she'd go just to show power and maturity. But I don't want to fake support for something that represents one of the most painful chapters of my life. I'm tired of being told to be the bigger person when I'm the only one who didn't do anything wrong. I've done the emotional labor of forgiving, rebuilding, and letting go, but that doesn't mean I owe them attendance or applause. Still, A small part of me wonders if I'm being too rigid. Maybe I should just show up, sit quietly, and let it roll off my back for the sake of family unity. But another part of me feels like attending would send the message that what they did was fine, and I just can't stomach that. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's recommitment wedding to my ex-husband, and for saying no to being her maid of honor. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house even though I technically have the space. So I, 32F, bought a 4-bedroom house last year after saving for nearly a decade. It was the proudest moment of my life. I grew up poor, worked through college, and juggled multiple jobs to get where I am. My parents were never great with money, and my older sister, Emma, 34F, has always struggled too, though in her case a lot of it is self-inflicted. Emma has 3 kids, 9M, 7F, and 4F, and split up with her husband 2 years ago. Since then, she's been bouncing between cheap rentals and staying with our parents. She works part-time at a salon, but she's always behind on rent or bills. My parents are retired and live in a small condo, so they can't host her long-term. About 2 months ago, Emma's landlord told her he was selling the house she was renting, and she had to be out in 6 weeks. She called me crying, saying she didn't know where to go and that she couldn't find a place she could afford. She asked if she and the kids could move in with me just until she got back on her feet. Here's where it gets complicated. I live alone, and yes, my house has 4 bedrooms, but that doesn't mean it's free real estate for my entire extended family. One room is my bedroom, one is a home office. I work remotely full-time, one is a guest room, and one I use as a small gym/storage space. The idea of suddenly having 4 extra people, 3 of them kids, completely upend my quiet, stable life made my chest tighten. I told Emma I'd think about it. For a week, I went back and forth. I knew if I said yes, it wouldn't be temporary. Emma has a pattern. She moves in somewhere just for a bit, then stays for months or years. I also knew that having kids in my house would mean noise, mess, and zero privacy. When I gently brought up the possibility of helping her pay for a rental instead, she got defensive. She said, "You have a house with empty rooms just sitting there, and I'm your sister. You'd rather waste money on a stranger's rent than help your family." I explained that it wasn't about money, it was about boundaries. She called me cold and said I was acting like a rich snob. I decided to offer a compromise. I'd give her $2,000 to help with moving costs or rent a smaller place, and she could store some of her stuff in my garage temporarily. She flipped out. She said I was buying her off and trying to make myself feel better without actually helping. She accused me of abandoning her and the kids. My parents then got involved. My mom called and told me Emma was beside herself and that I didn't understand what it's like to struggle as a mother. I told her I do understand struggling, but I worked hard to build stability and I wasn't going to give it up because Emma refuses to take accountability for her life. The situation got ugly fast. Emma posted a long rant on Facebook about selfish people who care more about their privacy than family. Several of our extended relatives commented things like, "You never know when you might need help someday," and "family should always stick together." It was obvious who she was talking about. I tried to ignore it, but I got texts from cousins asking if I really refused to help my homeless niece and nephews. I finally called Emma and told her that posting about me publicly was crossing the line. She said, "Maybe you'll grow a heart if people know what kind of person you really are." I hung up. Fast forward 3 weeks. She found a tiny 2-bedroom apartment about 40 minutes away with help from my parents. Apparently, it's cramped and in a rough neighborhood, and now the entire family is treating me like I personally put her there. My dad said, "You could have made everyone's life easier, but you chose comfort over compassion." The thing is, my peace and privacy are important to me. I worked so hard to get here. I know if Emma and the kids moved in, my home would never feel like mine again. I'd be helping them at the cost of my mental health, and probably my savings, too. But I still feel guilty. The kids didn't do anything wrong. I remember being their age, living in rundown apartments, sharing one bed with Emma. Part of me wonders if I've become the kind of person I used to resent, the relative who could help but won't. To make matters worse, Emma's oldest kid apparently told my mom, "Annie doesn't like us enough to live with us." My mom told me that, like she wanted me to feel bad. It worked. I keep replaying it in my head. Could I have handled this differently? Should I have just said yes for a few months and trusted that it would work itself out? But I know how that would have gone. Emma's car would break down. She'd need more time, then more money, and suddenly I'd be the full-time babysitter while she figured things out. I've seen this movie before. I'm also still upset about the Facebook thing. It wasn't just venting, it was a calculated way to get everyone on her side and shame me publicly. That really damaged our relationship. Now, our family gatherings are tense. My parents keep dropping comments like, "Must be nice to have so much space," or "We wouldn't want to inconvenience your perfect home." Emma barely talks to me except for the occasional passive-aggressive text about how the kids miss their aunt. I still visit the kids sometimes, and they're always sweet, but Emma uses those moments to guilt-trip me. She'll say things like, "They still ask why you didn't want them around," or "They'd love to see what your fancy house looks like." I've stopped inviting them over altogether because it just opens the door to more drama. Now I'm left wondering if I made the right call, or if I just protected myself too much. I don't want to be heartless, but I also don't think being family means you owe people your home. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in, even though I have the space and could technically afford to help them more. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's child-free wedding after she banned my son because of his disability. So this situation has basically split my family in half, and I honestly don't know if I'm being unreasonable or not. I, 34F, have a son, Ethan, who's 7. He's bright, funny, and loves dinosaurs more than anything else in the world. He's also autistic and has sensory processing issues. He's verbal, social, and affectionate, but he can get overwhelmed by loud noises or chaotic environments. When that happens, he'll cover his ears, hum to calm himself, or ask for a quiet space. My sister, Laura, 29F, got engaged last year to her fiancé, Matt. I was genuinely happy for them. Laura and I used to be close growing up, and she's always been very image-conscious but never mean-spirited. She's always dreamed of a perfect wedding, and she's been planning it down to the smallest detail. I thought I'd just be the supportive big sister helping out where I could. A few months ago, she called to tell me they decided to make their wedding child-free. That didn't surprise me. I know a lot of couples do that these days. But before I could even say anything, she said, "Of course, Ethan is different, so he's totally welcome." I thanked her and thought nothing of it. Fast forward to about a month ago. Laura sent out formal invitations and a link to her wedding website. The child-free note was there, but when I checked our RSVP section, Ethan's name wasn't included under my household. I thought it was just an oversight, so I texted her about it. She didn't respond for 2 days, which was weird because she usually replies instantly. Then she finally called and said, "Hey, I've been meaning to talk to you about that." Apparently, after careful consideration, she and Matt decided that having Ethan there might disrupt the atmosphere of the ceremony and reception. She said she'd done some research, her words, on autism and felt that the lights, music, and crowd might trigger him and cause a scene. She kept saying it was for his comfort and that she didn't want me to have to worry about managing him during the event. I told her that Ethan does fine at large gatherings as long as there's a quiet space for him to take breaks. I even offered to bring noise-canceling headphones and step out with him whenever he needed. But she doubled down, saying, "I just want everything to be elegant and smooth, and I can't guarantee that with a child who might react unpredictably." That really hurt. She wasn't just banning all kids, she was singling out mine. I asked her straight up, "So, if Ethan didn't have autism, would he still be invited?" And she said, "Well, probably yes, because he's family and a ring bearer would have been cute, but that's not the situation." That was it for me. I told her that if Ethan wasn't welcome, neither of us would attend. She immediately got defensive, saying I was making it about me and punishing her for wanting a peaceful day. She told me I was being dramatic and that she was trying to protect Ethan from being overwhelmed. I told her she wasn't protecting him. She was excluding him because she was embarrassed or uncomfortable with how he might act. She started crying, saying I was accusing her of being ableist, which she absolutely isn't. Then she said, "It's my wedding, and I should be allowed to decide who comes without being guilt-tripped." That's when things blew up. Our mom tried to mediate, but ended up taking Laura's side, saying she understood both perspectives, but that I should be the bigger person and just go alone to show support. My dad, on the other hand, said what Laura was doing was cruel and that if she's worried about a perfect image, maybe she should have married a mannequin instead of a man. That didn't go over well. Since then, things have been tense. Laura posted a long, vague Facebook post about how sometimes boundaries are necessary, even when others don't respect them. A bunch of her friends commented things like, "Protect your peace, girl," and "You don't owe anyone access to your special day." It was pretty clear who she was talking about. I didn't respond publicly, but I did privately message her that her boundary was discriminatory. She left me on read. Now my relatives are split. Some think I'm justified for standing by my kid and refusing to attend something that treats him like a problem. Others think I'm overreacting and letting Mom Gil control me. My aunt even said, "You can't expect everyone to accommodate every special need all the time." But here's what really makes me question myself. One of Laura's bridesmaids, who used to be my friend too, called me and said, "Look, I totally get your side, but the truth is, weddings are stressful. She's under so much pressure, and she's terrified something will go wrong. If Ethan had a meltdown or even just needed attention for a bit, Laura would panic. She's not trying to hurt you. She's just trying to control what she can." That almost made me feel guilty. I know my sister gets anxious about appearances, and maybe she's spiraling about this whole thing. But still, she's my sister, and Ethan is her nephew. He's a kid, not a liability. The wedding is next week. Everyone keeps asking if I'm really not going. I told them no. My husband agrees with me completely and said we're taking Ethan on a little weekend trip instead. Laura texted me 2 days ago saying she hopes I'll change my mind before it's too late and that she misses me. But she never once mentioned Ethan. Part of me wonders if I'm cutting off my nose to spite my face. Like, maybe I could have just gone for the ceremony, smiled through it, and left early. But another part of me feels like going would be telling my son that it's okay for people, even family, to exclude him because he's different. And that's not a message I can live with. So, AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she banned my autistic son? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move into my house after she passed away, even though he says it was her dying wish? This whole thing has split my family, and I genuinely don't know if I'm being heartless or setting a reasonable boundary. My sister, Ava, passed away 6 months ago after a long battle with cancer. She was only 31. I'm 33, and she was my best friend. We were always close growing up, even after she got engaged to her fiancé, Liam. He was around for about 4 years, and while I never hated him, I wouldn't say we were close either. He's one of those people who's charming on the surface, but always makes things subtly about himself. Ava adored him, though, and that was enough for me to tolerate the small annoyances. When Ava got diagnosed, everything happened so fast. She went through treatments, and for a while, it seemed like she might pull through. She stayed with me during her worst chemo months because I worked from home and could help her with daily stuff. Liam visited often, but he didn't stay overnight much because, according to him, he couldn't stand hospitals or sickness. I thought that was kind of a weak excuse, but Ava brushed it off. In the last few weeks before she passed, she came home from the hospital to my place for hospice care. That was the hardest period of my life. I basically put everything on hold to take care of her. Liam was around a bit more then, but honestly, he didn't handle it well. He would disappear for hours or even days, saying he needed air. I didn't judge him too harshly at the time. Grief affects everyone differently. After Ava passed, the funeral and everything afterward were a blur. Liam was devastated, and I tried to be supportive. But after about a month, he started coming around my house a lot more. He'd bring some of Ava's things that he said he couldn't bear to keep at his apartment. Then one evening, He sat me down and said he'd been thinking about something important. He told me that before Ava passed, she'd told him she wanted him to never feel alone and that she wanted us to look out for each other. He said she specifically mentioned that if he ever needed somewhere to go, he could come to me. According to him, she told him I would take care of him like family. Then he asked if he could move into my house, not just for a few weeks, but for as long as it takes for him to get back on his feet emotionally and financially. I was honestly stunned. I live in a 2-bedroom house. One room was Ava's, and I hadn't touched it since she passed. The thought of someone else living there, especially her fiancé, felt wrong. I told him gently that I wasn't comfortable with that. I said I could help him look for a place or even help with rent for a month if he needed it. But moving in wasn't something I could do. He got really upset. He said I was being cold and that Ava's dying wish was for us to be there for each other. He accused me of betraying her memory by shutting him out. I felt awful, but still said no. He left angry and hasn't spoken to me since. That's when the family drama exploded. Liam went to my parents and told them his version, that I'd thrown him out after Ava's death even though she wanted him close. My parents called me and said they remembered Ava saying something similar, that she hoped we'd all take care of Liam. My mom especially believes I should honor that. She told me, if Ava wanted him to feel like part of the family, who are you to say no? I told her that wanting to include him in the family and him moving into my house are two very different things. She said I was being selfish and that maybe I didn't understand how much he was hurting. My dad was more neutral, but he did say, if this was really Ava's wish, maybe you should find it in your heart to compromise. So I tried to compromise. I called Liam and offered to pay for 3 months of rent for him somewhere nearby, so he could start fresh. He turned it down flat, saying I was trying to buy him off. He said that living in Ava's space would help him heal because it's where she spent her last moments. That made me feel physically sick. The idea of him sleeping in her room, using her things, walking around the house she spent her last days in, it just felt invasive. I told him again no, and this time I was firmer. I said it wasn't about money or generosity. It was about boundaries and my own grief. That's when he said, "You're not grieving for her. You're just protecting your comfort." That comment broke something in me. I told him I was done talking about it and asked him to stop contacting me. He stormed out, and within a week, my parents and a few extended family members started calling me cold-hearted. They said Ava would never forgive me for turning my back on Liam. But here's the thing. Since Ava died, I haven't had a day of peace in that house. Her things are still there because I can't bring myself to pack them. I wake up some nights thinking I hear her voice. It's a fragile space for me, and the idea of someone else living there, especially someone who reminds me of her in such a complicated way, just feels unbearable. Last month, I found out from a friend that Liam has been telling people that I'm keeping Ava's home like a shrine and that I'm crazy possessive about her memory. That hurt a lot because it's not true. I just can't move on at his pace. My parents are still disappointed. My mom said the other day, Ava trusted you to keep him safe. You've let her down. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe I'm clinging too tightly to the house, to her things. But at the same time, every time I imagine him moving in, I feel panic. Last week, Liam sent me one last text saying he's finally moving to another city. He said he'll never forgive me for abandoning him when Ava wouldn't have. I didn't reply. Now I'm stuck wondering if I misread everything. Maybe Ava really did want to take him in. She was always the kindest person, and maybe she meant for me to help him more than I did. But if she did, she never said it to me directly. She never asked me to make him part of my home. I miss my sister every day, and I would do almost anything to honor her memory, but I just couldn't let someone else live in the last place she called home. Still, hearing everyone say I'm heartless makes me question whether I've done the right thing. So, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in, even if it might have been her dying wish? AITA for refusing to take my younger sister after she burned all bridges with our family and now has nowhere to go? I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger sister, Erin, 27F, has always been the opposite. She's the kind of person who lives purely in the moment, without thinking about how her choices affect anyone else. Growing up, she'd constantly get herself into trouble, skipping school, lying, stealing from our parents, and somehow she'd always get away with it because she was the baby and just needed time to grow. I went to college, got a stable job, and now I'm married with 2 kids, 5 and 3. Aaron, on the other hand, dropped out of college after 1 semester, drifted between jobs, and dated some very questionable people. Our parents have bailed her out of mess after mess, paying rent, clearing her credit card debt, even buying her a used car when hers got repossessed. The last straw for them came about a year ago when Aaron got arrested for shoplifting. She called my parents in tears, begging them to come bail her out. They did, of course, but when she came home, she blamed them for not supporting her mental health and said she was acting out because of their controlling energy. My mom cried for days after that fight, and my dad finally told Aaron that they were done helping her financially. After that, Aaron basically cut everyone off. She blocked our parents, ignored my texts, and moved in with some guy she met on social media. Fast forward to last month. I get a call from an unknown number, and it's Aaron. She's crying, saying her boyfriend kicked her out, she lost her job, and she's been sleeping in her car. She said she didn't want to call mom and dad because they just judge her, and she asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks until she gets back on her feet. Now, here's the thing. I have zero trust left in Aaron. The last time she stayed with me, 2 years ago, she stole $200 from my purse and claimed my son must have found it and played with it. She also borrowed my car without asking, came back with a dented bumper, and said she didn't notice hitting anything. When I confronted her, she cried until I felt guilty for even bringing it up. My husband, Luke, 35M, told me back then that he never wanted her staying with us again. So when she called, I told her I'd think about it and talk to Luke. He didn't even hesitate. He said absolutely not. He reminded me how stressful it was the last time she lived with us, and that he wouldn't risk having our kids around that again. He suggested I could help her in other ways, like paying for a motel for a few nights or helping her contact social services. When I called Erin back and told her that, she completely lost it. She screamed that I was abandoning her just like everyone else, and that I only care about appearances. She said I had everything easy in life because I played the good daughter while she got stuck as the family screw-up. I tried staying calm and told her I'd Venmo her enough for a few nights at a cheap motel, but she hung up on me. A few hours later, my mom called. Apparently Erin had called her too, crying and saying I refused to help her. My mom asked me if I could please just take her in for a week or two, saying she's still family and has nowhere else to go. I told her that Erin is 27 years old and needs to take responsibility for herself. My dad, surprisingly, agreed with me. He said he loves Erin but can't keep enabling her. That night, Erin posted a long rant on Facebook about how family is supposed to help you when you're down, and that some people only pretend to care until you stop being convenient. She didn't name me directly, but everyone who knows us could tell who she meant. Some of our relatives started messaging me, saying I should show compassion and that she's just struggling. The post got over 100 comments, some siding with her, some telling her to grow up. I didn't engage, but seeing people talk about me like I was some heartless monster really stung. A few days later, my parents told me that Erin finally agreed to go to a women's shelter program in our city that helps with job placement and housing. They said it's actually been good for her. She's been attending counseling sessions and working part-time at a cafe nearby. I was relieved, honestly. But then, last week, she texted me out of the blue. Her message said, "I forgive you. I know you did what you thought was best." It rubbed me the wrong way. She framed it like I had wronged her. I didn't respond. A day later, she sent another message saying she's planning to get a place soon, and maybe the kids could come see their aunt sometime. I haven't replied to that one either. My husband thinks I shouldn't engage at all until she shows consistent stability. But part of me feels guilty, like I'm punishing her for finally trying to turn things around. Then last night, my mom called again. Erin's shelter stay is ending soon, and she's apparently struggling to find affordable housing. My mom said, "She's doing better this time, honey. Can't you just let her stay for a month or two until she finds something?" I reminded her that a month or two turned into 6 months last time, and ended with stolen money and broken trust. Mom said I was being too hard on Erin, that she's changing. Luke overheard the call and got angry. He said if I even consider letting Erin move in, he and the kids will stay with his parents until she's gone. He's not bluffing. He's had enough of the chaos. Now I feel completely torn. On one hand, I know Erin has made her own choices and I shouldn't have to clean up the mess. On the other hand, she is my sister. What if something bad happens to her while I'm sitting here in my safe, warm house with my family? But I also can't forget the lies, the manipulation, the way she made me feel guilty every single time I try to set a boundary. I've spent years being the good sister, the one who picks up the pieces. I'm exhausted from it. My mom is barely speaking to me now because she says I'm acting like a stranger. Erin hasn't contacted me again, but I can't shake the guilt. I keep replaying that phone call in my head, her crying and saying she had nowhere to go. Still, I know what would happen if I let her in. The same cycle would repeat. She'd promise to be different, and then the small things would start. The missing cash, the borrowed car, the tears, the drama. My husband would resent me, my kids would be confused, and I'd be back in that exhausting place of walking on eggshells. So I said no. Again. Now I'm wondering if that makes me cold-hearted. Maybe I could have handled it better. Maybe I should have done more. Or maybe, after years of being her safety net, saying no is the most loving thing I could do. AITA for refusing to take her in when she had nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she banned my boyfriend from it. So, this is going to be long, but I need to lay out the context. I, 28F, had a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and we've generally had a pretty normal sibling relationship. Some minor rivalries growing up, but nothing extreme. Our parents are divorced, and both remarried, so family events tend to be complicated but manageable. Emily got engaged last year, and I was genuinely happy for her. She's been dating her fiancé, Tom, 27M, for about 3 years, and for what I can tell, they're great together. The drama started when she announced the guest list and included some weird stipulations. Nothing major at first, just no +1s outside family for some extended family members, which I thought was annoying but manageable. The real issue arose when I mentioned casually to her that I'd be bringing my boyfriend, Alex, 30M, who I've been dating for 2 years. Emily immediately stiffened and told me that he wouldn't be welcome at her wedding. She didn't give a reason other than, I don't want him there. End of discussion. I was shocked. I tried to ask why, hoping it was something we could work through, and she got defensive. She said that Alex had attitude problems and that he's too intense, which I find ridiculous because he's one of the kindest, most laid-back people I know. He's never had a single negative interaction with any of my family members, including Emily herself. I explained that it's not fair to expect me to attend a major life event without my partner, especially since we've been together for 2 years and lived together. She got angry, saying that her wedding is her day and that I should just respect her wishes. I told her that I respected her day, but that I also have boundaries. I refused to come unless Alex was allowed. I thought this was reasonable, and I even suggested a compromise, like Alex attending the reception only, but she flat out rejected it. After that, our relationship has been tense. Our parents are split on it. Mom thinks I should just go alone and not make a fuss. Dad is neutral, but thinks Emily could have been more accommodating. My friends are mostly supportive and think Emily is being unreasonable. The day before the wedding, Emily sent me a long group text to our family saying that she's disappointed and hurt, that I won't be there, framing it as if I'm the villain. She also hinted that some relatives were questioning my loyalty to the family. I responded calmly, saying that I love her and wish her the best, but I couldn't attend under these conditions. Alex supported me fully, saying he wouldn't attend either, which only made Emily angrier. Now, several family members have reached out to me privately, some saying I should apologize and just go, while others say I'm justified. Emily hasn't spoken to me directly since, and she posted wedding photos on social media, clearly without me there. I feel sad because I wanted to be there, but I also feel like I can't compromise on this principle. Here's the kicker. Last week, A cousin who was at the wedding told me that Emily and Tom specifically asked other guests to avoid mentioning me or Alex, almost as if I don't exist. That hurt more than anything. I've never been confrontational, and I've always tried to support Emily, but this whole situation has left me feeling isolated and unfairly judged. I've been debating whether I overreacted. Some friends say weddings are complicated and that maybe I should have just gone solo. But I can't shake the feeling that Emily crossed a line by outright banning someone I've been in a serious relationship with for years. I've tried to approach this calmly, but it's exhausting. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she banned my boyfriend from it? AITA for causing tension at my family reunion over a gift my cousin received? This all started last month during our annual family reunion. I come from a large, fairly close-knit family, and every year we gather in my grandparents' house for a weekend full of food, games, and some awkwardly competitive board games. Everyone's usually in a good mood, but this year things got complicated. So, my cousin Emma, who's turning 18 this year, received what some might call a substantial graduation gift from my aunt and uncle. It wasn't just a little cash or a gift card. It was a brand new car. Not a used one, not a hand-me-down, but a shiny, fully loaded compact SUV. Now, Emma is a smart, hard-working kid, but she's also very sheltered and hasn't had to worry much about finances growing up. The car was an amazing gift, no doubt about it, but I immediately noticed the reaction from some of the other cousins. Here's where things start. Being a 24-year-old with a modest job and still paying off student loans, was not expecting to react strongly. But when I saw the expressions around the table, I felt an odd mix of embarrassment, frustration, and just plain confusion. Some cousins were whispering to each other, others were laughing awkwardly, and a few openly made comments like, "Wow, must be nice," or "she's really lucky." My younger cousin Jake, who's 16, even muttered under his breath, "Guess I should have studied harder." It was all very passive-aggressive, but noticeable. Now, I've always been the one who's been very vocal about equality and fairness in our family. I know that's a loaded word because, honestly, no one in my family is exactly poor, but some of us do earn our way through work, scholarships, or frugal living, and not all of us get extravagant gifts. Watching Emma receive a car made me feel unsettled. Not that she didn't deserve it. She's brilliant, but because the rest of us are not children of billionaires or people with that much disposable income. The tipping point came that evening during dinner. The conversation naturally turned to gifts and someone, I don't even remember who, jokingly asked what everyone else got for their graduation. When it came my turn, I felt a twinge of resentment, and I blurted out, "Well, I didn't get a car. I had to work 3 summers to pay for my first car, which was a used hatchback. Emma probably doesn't even realize what she has." Silence. Then a few people laughed nervously. I immediately regretted the phrasing, because it definitely sounded bitter. My Aunt Emma's mom gave me a long, thin smile and said, "Well, that's life, sweetheart. We give what we can." Emma just looked uncomfortable and kept fiddling with her napkin. Later, I tried to apologize to my aunt and uncle privately, saying I didn't mean to sound ungrateful or accusatory, but they shrugged it off with a vague, "Don't worry about it," and changed the subject. I thought that would be the end of it, but things escalated subtly over the next day. Other cousins started siding in small ways with Emma's parents, making side comments about how I was being dramatic or that I just don't understand generosity. Feeling defensive, I ended up speaking my mind again during a group conversation about careers and independence. I said something along the lines of, "It's hard for some of us to achieve things without huge handouts, so seeing this kind of gift makes it feel unfair sometimes." It's not that I'm not happy for Emma. I just think it creates an imbalance, even unintentionally. At this point, the room got really tense. My aunt actually said, "If you think gifts are about fairness, you're missing the point. We give what we want to give." Some cousins tried to mediate, saying both sides had a point, but the mood was ruined for the rest of the day. Emma barely talked to me after that, and I could feel that the cousins who had been subtly laughing at my earlier comments now looked at me like I was jealous or ungrateful. After we left the reunion, several family members texted me. Some were defensive, saying I shouldn't have made a big deal out of a gift, and others tried to console me, saying I weren't wrong for pointing out that extreme gifts can make people uncomfortable. My parents, meanwhile, told me to let it go and not ruin family events over money. I've been thinking a lot about it since then. On one hand, I feel like I was honest about my feelings and tried to express a perspective that rarely gets acknowledged in my family. On the other hand, I realize I might have projected my frustrations onto Emma, who didn't ask for the car and was probably just excited about it. I truly didn't want to upset anyone, but now the entire family seems a little more guarded around me, and I feel like I've become the grumpy cousin in just one weekend. So, AITA for speaking up about feeling uncomfortable with how extravagant my cousin's graduation gift was, even though it caused tension at the reunion. I didn't say Emma was spoiled or anything. I just expressed my own perspective about fairness and the impact of unequal gifts in a family setting. I want to stress that I wasn't trying to shame her. I just wanted to voice that huge gifts can create awkward dynamics, especially when not everyone has the same financial situation. But now, I'm starting to wonder if that's something families are just supposed to swallow quietly, without mentioning it at all. I don't want to ruin future family events, but I also don't want to bottle up my feelings every time something like this happens. I'm stuck between feeling validated in my discomfort and guilty for causing a rift that wasn't really anyone's fault. Has anyone else been in a situation like this, where a gift caused unintended tension? How do you handle being honest without upsetting the whole family? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she threatened to cut me out of her life. This is going to be a long one, so please bear with me. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Rachel, 32F. Growing up, our relationship was a mix of sibling rivalry and deep loyalty. We shared a lot, but as we got older, our differences became more pronounced. Rachel is very controlling and has always had a strong vision for how her life should be, often expecting everyone around her to fit into that vision. I, on the other hand, have always been more laid-back and independent-minded. About 3 years ago, Rachel got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 33M. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. Mark seems like a good guy, and they genuinely seem to care about each other. But the engagement also marked the beginning of a dramatic shift in Rachel's behavior toward me. She started becoming extremely rigid about what I should or shouldn't do when it came to family matters, and I felt like she was trying to control my life in subtle ways. Fast forward to a year ago, when she started planning the wedding. I made it clear that I couldn't attend the initial dress fittings or some of the pre-wedding events because of work commitments and prior personal obligations. She was fine with it at first, but as time went on, her tone changed. She started sending long, guilt-laden messages about how much it would hurt her if I wasn't there for every single moment. I tried to explain that I was happy to attend the wedding itself and any essential events, but I couldn't rearrange my life to accommodate every single pre-wedding activity. Then came the real issue. She requested that I stay at her house the night before the wedding along with all the other bridesmaids. I live a couple of hours away and have a cat I cannot leave alone overnight. When I explained that I would need to get a hotel or commute from my place, she lost it. Her response was a text that said something along the lines of, "If you can't be here for me fully, maybe you don't really care about me." I'm not sure I can forgive that. I tried reasoning with her and suggested a compromise where I could stay at a nearby hotel and still participate in all the morning of preparations. But she was adamant that anything less than sleeping at her house was unacceptable. Things escalated further when she added a series of conditions about my behavior during the wedding itself. She insisted that I not talk to certain family members she considered toxic, mainly our distant cousins who have a history of petty drama, and that I strictly follow the seating arrangement she had dictated, even if it meant sitting away from my closest friends. She also requested that I wear a specific outfit she chose for me, even though I had expressed that I was uncomfortable with the style. By this point, I was feeling increasingly frustrated and suffocated. A week before the wedding, she sent me a message that read, "If you can't do these things for me, maybe you're not the sister I thought you were. I'll have to reconsider having you in my life after this." At this point, I felt like I was being coerced into a situation where my personal boundaries didn't matter. I had already spent weeks trying to compromise and make her happy while maintaining my own autonomy, and every attempt seemed to be dismissed. After some sleepless nights and long discussions with friends and my partner, I decided to tell Rachel that I could not attend her wedding under these conditions. I explained that I loved her and wanted to celebrate with her, but I could not comply with rules that made me uncomfortable or that require me to compromise my responsibilities and personal ethics. I offered to send a heartfelt video message or have a private lunch with her before or after the wedding as a way to show my support without violating my boundaries. Her response was immediate and devastating. She blocked me on all social media, told our parents that I had ruined everything, and chose to be selfish over family, and claimed that she would not be speaking to me again. Our parents are torn. They understand that I have legitimate reasons for my decisions, but they also sympathize with Rachel because she's always been very emotional and tends to react strongly when things don't go her way. Since then, several extended family members have reached out to me, some expressing disappointment that I won't be at the wedding, and others quietly admitting that Rachel can be overbearing and that my stance is understandable. I've tried to explain my perspective gently to anyone who asks, but it's been exhausting. I also feel guilty because I really do love my sister and I want to be part of her life, but I can't help feeling that her expectations crossed a line into emotional manipulation. The fallout has been intense. I haven't heard from Rachel directly since the wedding, and her fiancé seems caught in the middle. Our parents are trying to mediate, but I suspect Rachel has already made up her mind that I am the villain in this scenario. Some friends have told me I was right to stand my ground, while others think I should have attended to keep the peace. I keep going back and forth in my mind. Part of me feels like family should make sacrifices for each other, especially for milestone events like a wedding. But another part of me feels like giving in to ultimatums and emotional manipulation sets a dangerous precedent for the rest of my life. I don't want to be the person who sacrifices my own boundaries just to avoid conflict, but I also hate that this decision has caused a rift with my sister that might never heal. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she made unreasonable demands and threatened to cut me out of her life. Character count, 6,437 if you want. I can also craft an even longer version hitting closer to 7,000 characters with added layers of family drama and backstory to make it feel like a top viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's past. I, 28F, have always been very close to my sister, Emma, 32F. We grew up in the same small town, went to the same schools, and shared everything. Over the years, we've had our disagreements, but nothing major. Recently, though, I've found myself in a situation that has completely divided our family, and I'm honestly questioning whether I'm being unreasonable. A few months ago, Emma announced she was engaged to her boyfriend, Daniel, 34M. She seemed extremely happy, and I was genuinely thrilled for her at first. But shortly after the announcement, a few old friends of mine reached out with some concerning stories about him. Apparently, Daniel has a history of being verbally abusive to past partners and, more disturbingly, has a record of petty fraud and harassment. None of this was something Emma seemed aware of, and I felt like I needed to tell her. I tried to approach the situation delicately. I told Emma that I had heard some things about Daniel's past and that I was worried about her. I didn't want to attack him directly. I just wanted to make sure she was aware and careful. Emma's reaction was intense. She accused me of trying to ruin her relationship and of being jealous. I insisted I wasn't jealous. I genuinely wanted her to be safe and happy. She stormed off and hasn't spoken to me much since. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and she sent me the wedding invitation. At first, I tried to convince myself I could attend and just be polite, but the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became. Daniel's history isn't something I can ignore. I've seen how it affects people, and I can't just smile and pretend like everything is fine. I told Emma that I wouldn't be attending the wedding because I couldn't support someone with that kind of past. I offered to meet her separately to celebrate her happiness if she wanted, but attending the wedding itself was out of the question. Emma was furious. She accused me of being dramatic, controlling, and selfish. She said I was embarrassing her in front of our family and friends, and that I was being an adult child by refusing to support her on her big day. Our parents tried to mediate, but it quickly became clear that they were leaning toward Emma's side. My parents told me that while they understood my concerns, refusing to attend would make me the villain in the family story. My father suggested I at least go to the reception, if not the ceremony, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The family dynamic has completely shifted since my decision. Emma hasn't spoken to me at all, and our parents are giving me the silent treatment or making subtle comments about how this isn't like me. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to protect myself and stand by my values, while others think I'm overreacting and making a family issue into a public one. I don't expect anyone to change Emma's mind, and I've accepted that I might lose her entirely if she goes through with this wedding. But I also can't shake the feeling that attending would be compromising my principles and personal boundaries. I keep replaying the moments in my head, thinking maybe I could have handled it differently, or maybe I should just swallow my feelings for the sake of family peace. But the thought of standing there smiling at someone I fundamentally distrust terrifies me. I also worry about my own mental health. Just imagining sitting in the same room as Daniel makes me anxious and uneasy. I've tried explaining this to Emma and our parents, but it feels like no one takes my feelings seriously because I'm just being dramatic. Now, a few people in my family are openly criticizing me, saying I'm choosing to be alienated over gossip and ruining what should be the happiest day of Emma's life. I understand that weddings are supposed to be about joy and family, but I also think they shouldn't come at the expense of ignoring real concerns about someone's character. I'm stuck in this uncomfortable middle ground where I don't want to be the reason my sister is unhappy, but I also don't want to put myself in a situation that feels morally or emotionally wrong. To be clear, I've never been close to Daniel, and I don't even know if every accusation about him is accurate. But the consistency of the stories and the patterns make me feel like my caution is justified. I've also thought about the possibility that I'm being overly protective and projecting my own anxieties onto the situation, but the thought of being complicit in what could be a toxic environment for my sister is unbearable. I'm now dealing with family members who are asking me to reconsider for the sake of family, but I honestly don't see a way to attend without feeling like I'm compromising everything I stand for. I know Emma might never forgive me, and I'm coming to terms with that. But I'm genuinely torn. Am I being the unreasonable one for refusing to go to my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's past? Or am I justified in prioritizing my principles and mental health over tradition and social expectation? The silence and tension at family gatherings have been unbearable, and I can't help but feel guilty, even though I know deep down that my choice is based on a sincere concern for both myself and my sister. I just don't know if I'm wrong for standing firm, or if I should swallow my fears and go to the wedding to keep peace in the family. AITA, thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.